Hey everyone, question for you. Have you ever gone to a website to log in or create an account and immediately been hit with a CAPTCHA? Now you're stuck trying to figure out, is that a light pole, a stop sign, a crosswalk, a bicycle, a taxi? On and on and on. I, for one, am terrible at those things and find it super frustrating. I also have to ask, is your company using CAPTCHA to keep attackers and bots out of your applications? Well, today I have Dan Woods and Jarrod Overson from Shape Security with me to discuss how easy it actually is to defeat CAPTCHA and how, in our brand new series, this is really bad security.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. As Matt said, I'm Dan Woods from, actually it's Shape Security, which is now part of F5. We got acquired by F5 earlier this year. And yeah, we've been encountering CAPTCHAs both in our professional lives as Shape Security employees, also as individuals, and you go to create an account or log in and you're constantly being hit with these CAPTCHAs and they become so annoying. They even have, fun CAPTCHA where you're supposed to rotate a gorilla until it's right side up. There's nothing about that that's fun. I suppose it might be fun for my 6-year-old son, but that's it. We consider this friction. You don't want to impose friction on any of your customers. All that does is negatively impact, your bottom line. So the other day I did a presentation Matt viewed where I showed using slides how easy it is to defeat CAPTCHA using human click farms, two CAPTCHA in particular, one in Russia, where you're able to interact with that human click farm by an API. So while humans are solving the CAPTCHAs, bots are tasking the humans. Matt asked for this follow-up session where we could share some of that content. And it occurred to me that, why would I show slides when we could have a very talented engineer by way of Jarrod Overson actually do it live and kind of do screen sharing and show you the lines of code and how it works. Look, I'm an engineer by education, but the longest program I've ever written is maybe 100 lines of Python. And when real programmers take a look at my code, it works, by the way, my code works, but the real Python programmers, they chuckle and say, all that could be done in 10 lines of code. So I am not the guy to be reviewing lines of code. So for that, I'd like to introduce Jarrod Overson. He's not just one of our talented engineers, but he was one of the earliest employees at Shape Security. He's responsible for a lot of the early intellectual property that grew to become Shape Security, which, as I mentioned, was acquired by F5 for $1 billion. So you've got a lot of expertise in Jarrod Overson. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him kind of explain line by line and technical details, maybe even do a demo if he can do it. I'm not sure. I don't want to put him on the spot, but that's what these live recordings are all about. Jarrod Overson, over to you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Matt. I'm Jarrod. I've been with Shape for a long time. I think I kind of got lucky and got acquired by Shape like 6-something years ago. I've just got like a weird dot by dot background of just like weird tech stuff and engineering stuff. Always liked hacking around with things, but never really thought I could make money doing it. Like hacking video games, StarCraft, Fallout, Total Annihilation way back in the day. And that's like the cat and mouse sort of hacking, tweaking, whatever else. Like you do something with a client program, the server people company don't like it. So they throw down a patch that specifically targets the type of stuff that you're trying to do. And then you iterate, figure something else out, and it's just back and forth. And that was always fun to me because, I don't know, I was a kid and had plenty of time. And then grew up, learned webby stuff, and then the then VP of engineering at Shape found me, and then all of that knowledge kind of just congealed into Shape Security, which is now we have a bunch of products, but the stuff that I built was basically just making a super smooth and adaptive production level cat and mouse playing game for securing websites. And the cat and mouse thing is important because Captchas, like they take a long time to research and develop and all those things, while the attacker can just sit at home till 2 a.m. and figure out how to bypass something. And then the Captcha maker has to go through this whole process again. Person at home spends 30 minutes, retools, and does it all over again. So it's just a game that's not really winnable when you're a big company deploying massive, complex things, when you're playing against people who can just, I don't know, sit in bedrooms, bathrooms, wherever they code and just iterate constantly.
You sit in your bathroom and code?
It's just a rambling stuff. You know what? Sometimes.
That's kind of
sometimes wherever the inspiration comes.
I told you it was hardcore, man. I told you.
As long as he's not in his bathroom right now, we're good to go.
Yeah. So anyway, Captchas, I don't think we've defined it yet, but those are the completely automated public Turing tests to tell computers and humans apart. That's what Captcha means. I'm not sure whether or not the acronym or the whatever came first, but it's a test that a human should be able to do and a computer shouldn't be able to do. Back in the early days, it was the two squiggly letters, or two squiggly words that you had to write out. And the thought process was a computer couldn't figure that out. Human could relatively easily read those letters, type it in. Over time, computers got much, much better at figuring out those letters. So that evolved to the crosswalk stuff, or the 9x9 grid where you have to tell Google what a crosswalk is or what a fire hydrant is. Or you use something like Fun Capture where you twist a ball until the elephant monkey is right side up or something weird like that. But these are all evolving into more just kind of like fingerprinting solutions that are looking for inconsistencies in what you're telling them, as opposed to just like solving something hard. Because computers have gotten so much better and so much cheaper that they can solve things pretty well nowadays. So services like Google and whatever else are trying to figure out what is weird about what you're doing that is different than normal traffic. But all that stuff's still easy to get by.
Hey, Jarrod, I had read years ago that the Google's reCAPTCHA with the two squiggly words, they were actually helping Google to transcribe the world's books. Did you hear about that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, as far as I know, the two words, one of them was the test, the other one was data gathering for transcription and whatever else. So you wouldn't know which one it was. You would correctly transcribe both. One of them would be the test that would determine whether or not you did it correctly. The other one would be used to figure out what that word is. And the more people filled out things correctly, the more books were transcribed, or as they say.
So Google treated the entire world as one big human click farm.
Wow.
Yeah, which it sounds good when you're transcribing hard to read books. You're digitizing the world's library. That's cool. Now that grid that you're dealing with is just helping Google get further and further ahead with things like maps and Street View and identifying things and self-driving cars. So it's really giving them a ridiculous advantage by crowdsourcing massive data gathering, and it's a good idea and it's cool. I just have a hard time really loving it.
I can tell you that while maybe the technology has advanced, my human brain has not. And anytime I still happen to see those two squiggly lines, I'm like, well, here's 15 minutes of my life trying. I'm like, no, I swear that was an N. That had to be an N that was there. But for whatever reason, I'm the worst at it. So,
hey, Jarrod, do you plan to show any of the training that Captcha puts its Captcha solvers through? Because if not, I'll describe it.
Oh, okay, no, go for it. I did not have that queued up.
All right, so I went and joined Captcha, and as you'll learn in a minute, it's a Russian human click farm that all you do all day long is solve captchas and earn money doing it. So I signed up for Captcha because I wanted to see if maybe it could be a secondary source of income. And when you sign up, you have to go through training, and it teaches you how to solve captchas. Like if it's on two lines, or how to differentiate O's from zeros or L's from I's. It teaches you. It's like a good 10 minutes of instruction, and then they test you. And if you can't solve CAPTCHAs fast enough, then you don't get hired. So I'm going through this process, and I'm like one CAPTCHA away from failing to be hired. And I thought, I'm a smart guy. I mean, how can I not get hired by a human click farm? I mean, I fog up a mirror held under my nose. I should be able to do this. And sure enough, I got the last one right, and I was officially hired. And then I started solving CAPTCHAs. I think I solved like 60 or 70 of them, and I hadn't even earned one penny US yet. Oof. So they are really exploiting, some impoverished countries who just all day long, 12, 14, 16-hour days solving CAPTCHAs, and they're earning less than $3 US for the day. So it's really a tragedy. But it did teach me to become a better CAPTCHA solver. So that's really the only upside to that experience. But look, if anybody in the audience is interested in experiencing that, you just go to 2captcha.com and sign up, and they'll put you through the training, and you can even start earning money, but you won't earn much. So don't quit your day job.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think one of my CAPTCHA solving videos is up on 2captcha.com because it was delivering them so much traffic. Basically, it was just like documentation on how to use the API. It was a general CAPTCHA solving video, but they got enough traffic that they became aware of it, and now it's prominently displayed on their for customers section.
That's true. Yeah, I remember coming across that. Huh. Right. So I'm sorry, I kept interrupting with anecdotes. Jarrod, please continue.
Yeah, sure. So the way these CAPTCHA solvers work, or the way most CAPTCHA solvers work, is you initiate some sort of solution process. If it's an online service, then you send the service. Let's deal with simple CAPTCHAs, just like an image. Like you get some random image on some random site, might be specific or custom or whatever else, but just like you have to fill in some letters. So you send that service the image, and you pull for the solution. So it's 2 HTTP requests, and the solution that you get back is hopefully the correct letters typed out, or whatever the image was trying to get you to do. For very, very popular CAPTCHA solutions like reCAPTCHA and probably some others, there are streamlined processes for that because there's so much information about them and so much incentive to make the process better that you pass an ID or some sort of special identifier to the service at the start, and then the service presents you with the response that the CAPTCHA or defense is expecting. So for Google's reCAPTCHA, it's like the G reCAPTCHA ID or something like that. It's something that's embedded in the JavaScript or the HTML. You grab that, you send it off to 2CAPTCHA or Death by CAPTCHA or whatever, and then you pull for the response. And it might be that like 2CAPTCHA or whatever distributes that reCAPTCHA ID to a farm of decent or good enough computers. They get the response back from those and then send them off, or it sends it off to a human who goes through the crosswalk checking or whatever. But the act is the same. You deliver something, you pull for something back, and then you move on with your life. And I think, Matt, you were saying before we started recording that sometimes you go through the reCAPTCHA steps like 10, 20 times.
Oh yeah.
And that's not uncommon for me either. And it's actually faster to use a service like 2CAPTCHA to just go through your CAPTCHAs automatically than to sit through and try to go through 10 to 20 times.
I came across one the other day. I think it was FCAPTCHA that I solved the crosswalk question correctly, and it told me, yes, that's correct, but it took you too long. Try again. I was about ready to throw my computer through the window.
One of the ones that I always struggle with is when it's like stoplights, but it's connected to a bunch of other wires. And I'm like, does it want me to click on all the wires or just the ones with the stoplights, or exactly how does this work? And I literally like 2 hours ago went through one that I had to answer 6 different times. If it was a bicycle or a crosswalk or whatever. It's super annoying. I mean, it really, in all honesty, from a And you know, I always say when we're having these security conversations that we're looking at things through the lens of we click on stuff all the time, right? How much more frustrating for someone who doesn't live in front of a computer 24 hours a day like we do to have to go to a site and then try to figure all of this stuff out. It's got to be perplexing to at least. So.
And it's like if you're not a native English speaker, or you're not really familiar with certain customs in the country that you're being delivered the captchas to, then you might not really know what a fire hydrant is, or what specifically a traffic signal is, whether or not a traffic sign is a traffic signal, or anything like that. Then you end up just getting this frustrating loop, and that's a best case. I've been served some things from reCAPTCHA that are the grainiest, lowest resolution pictures that I've ever seen. Well, I guess in the past like 5 to 10 years of the internet, and like trying to figure out what those are at all, let alone whether or not they contain the bus or something, is just a pain in the butt. Yeah. So now I can screen share and go through the process.
I think that would be awesome if you'd be willing to do that. I think it's super cool. Yeah, when I was watching Dan walk through it just in the slides, and then I watched a couple of YouTube videos that you guys put up as well and thought it was fascinating. So,
yeah, sure. Let's see. Let's start this up. So I have.
We're going to see Hackium today.
Yes, I am using that. Not that it has to be Hackium. It just makes the code cleaner. So that's what we got. So I do have a stupidly wide screen, and I hope that we can figure out how to make this more easily viewable.
That's pretty good. I can see it pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's all right. We'll see how my amazing video editing skills are when I get this thing going up onto YouTube. But
all right, let's maximize what we got going here. So this is really not going to be overwhelmingly exciting because there is just so little to it. This is I guess to start, I've been doing a lot of weird web stuff for a very long time, and I've always really wanted a browser to help me more instead of stand in my way as much as they do. So I've have a bunch of like weird snippets and files that I copy and paste and configurations over and over and over again. And over the course of the past year or so, I grouped up everything that I had and made a project called Hackium, which is just like kind of a pre-configured Chromium that disables a lot of annoying stuff that gets in your way, wraps it with a bunch of automation APIs, and makes more accessible to Node.js, a programming environment. So you can install that via NPM. It was just released a couple weeks ago, and this is one of the scripts I used to demo at the DEF CON session where it was released. I guess if there are show notes or whatever else, then I can give a link to the video. But this shows how to use Hackium and Captcha to automate past a CAPTCHA. So we're using Reddit as an example because I've just been beating up on them for years because they don't seem to actually care that much about security. This is the script. Hold on, let me change the username because it's the one that I already used for the DEF CON session. I've moved some of the boring stuff to poll for request results and initiate capture request in a library. It's not that I'm hiding anything too crazy. It's just boring stuff like big objects that send things to CAPTCHA, making URL requests, polling. It's not stuff that's really meaningful to the overall process. And it'll look the same. It's virtually the same in any other language. So the first steps here, grab an API key, which I have hidden somewhere else so that you can't see what that is. We use the Puppeteer APIs to go to old.reddit.com/login. We grab the request ID from CAPTCHA. So we pass it our API key and we initiate a CAPTCHA request. And then while that's going on, we actually, I do need to show you something. Hold on. So I do have some data in the library that is important. So the site key is from reddit.com. And this is just something you find in the HTML. So it's not super crazy or secret, but you do need to find that because that is what the 2Captcha service needs in order to start figuring out what the Google reCAPTCHA response is going to be. So we get a request ID back from 2Captcha, and then we just start typing in the page. So we type in our username in the user_reg field. We type in our password, which is a throwback to the old hacker movie Sneakers. We type that into the 2 password input fields. And then after we're done with all the stuff that needs to be done on the page, all we do is wait for our results. So we pass 2Captcha, our API key, and the request ID we got from over here. And then once we got that, we have the response, and we shove that into the page by evaluating JavaScript that just puts that response into a element on the page, g-reCAPTCHA-response. And that's it. Then we press the submit button, and that's how we solve CAPTCHAs. So let us go through that and see it work. Hopefully it still actually works. So you can use Hackin on the command line. We're typing in our username. So at this point, 2Captcha is already being pulled. You can see in the background of the terminal over here. Yeah, see, we're waiting because there's just a certain amount of time you have to wait for 2Captcha to begin with. I think I've set that to about 15 seconds. And then is it really done already? Oh, wow, look at that. It was faster than I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd have more time to talk, but nope, that's done. Now we have a new account on Reddit, and we can do whatever Reddit-y stuff that we do.
Reddit-y stuff. I love that.
So I'm still using Reddit. Like I initially wrote up how to do this like two and a half years ago, and the script has barely changed in that time. So they have no interest whatsoever in making it more secure and harder to create massive amounts of social media accounts.
Yeah. I mean, not to pick on them, because I'm sure a lot of others are the same, but when you think of the massive amounts of fake accounts that are created on a lot of these different sites, I would have to imagine there's just somebody that's out there with code like this, just creating accounts left and right and then using them for whatever purpose, that nefarious purpose they want.
Yeah, we see a lot of automated attacks against the create account endpoint across the entire Shape network. Largely, it's to maybe verify whether or not account exists. You know, like if you try to create an account in the name dswood65 and you get a message that says that account already exists, well, then you know that account exists. There's really no reason to try a password, for a username if the account doesn't even exist on the target site. All you do is negatively impact your login success rate. Other times they create hundreds of thousands or even millions of accounts just to take advantage of some loyalty program. Or maybe if the company gives away something for free, like a free cup of coffee or a free donut or something, they'll create tens of thousands of accounts and enjoy that free perk over and over and over again. We've even seen millions of accounts be created for the purpose of exploiting a refer a friend program, where you create a couple thousand accounts, they refer a couple thousand accounts, they refer a couple thousand accounts, and so now you've got this huge pyramid of fake accounts, and somebody is benefiting from the refer a friend program. With some of our financial customers, we see create account for money laundering. Or even some of our retail customers, if any of the accounts allow you to move assets between accounts, we often see those accounts being used for money laundering. I didn't mention it in my intro, but I'm a former FBI agent, and I used to, investigate, money laundering and other sorts of white collar crimes. And, I would sit in my office for weeks going over banking statements. Putting it all into a spreadsheet or into QuickBooks or something, just to follow the money, maybe between 8 different bank accounts. The idea that I could follow the assets or follow the money through thousands of accounts it just makes my head explode. There's just no way I could do that. So, Matt, how much we have more time left? I know that what Jarrod described was pretty technical. I mean, there are lines of code there, and I'm not sure how many people in the audience fully understood the lines of code. So I knew I said I wasn't going to show anything, but I'm hoping that somebody in your audience is more like me and not as technical as Jarrod, and might appreciate kind of a higher a view of how this works from a higher level perspective.
Yeah.
So if that's all right, can I
Yeah,
share?
yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. I was expecting the defeat Captcha thing to take some time, but it was more. Jarrod spent more time setting it. It was like a magic trick, right? You think you got to spend all this time setting it up, and then it's the magic just happens at the end. So, frightening how easy that. I mean, obviously, it takes right. This stuff that he's done takes some brain power that I don't have, but once it's done, I mean, it's kind of there. I'm sure that all of those codes are not secret and out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do that, and then I'd like to transition for a few minutes just into, because I know we've got some people that work for companies in our audience that do use Captcha. So let's talk. Show what you have, Dan, and then let's talk a little bit about. Okay, so Captcha bad because that's easy. No. So what else, right? So like what's better than Captcha, I guess.
Right. Okay. So and maybe when you edit this, maybe you'll want to move this part towards the front because what I'm about to describe is what Jarrod did in seconds. So let's say that you have your website, and when somebody visits the website, you serve it some sort of a squiggly line captcha, one of the traditional captchas. The way this would work is that bad actor would use the API to interact with 2Captcha. 2Captcha would task all of their humans to solve that. All of them would solve it. Some would get it wrong, others would get it right. So the best answer is the one they see answered most frequently, which is overlooks. That is sent back to the fraudster via the API and then provided to your website. So they're seen as human. All this takes place in seconds, very, very quick. Now, the I'm not a robot checkbox proceeds a little differently. This time you serve that up. The bad actor will task 2Captcha with going to your site and solving the I'm not a robot checkbox, getting the token, and then they just deliver the token to the fraudster via the API. The fraudster does not need to check this box. All they need to do is submit the token to your site and you'll see them as human. This takes a little longer, typically between 30 or 40 seconds. Now, that may seem like it's slowing down the attack, but what's happening is hundreds of thousands or even millions of these are happening concurrently. So these can result in large volume attacks across many, many verticals. And they can even put it all through one IP address through proxy. So that is entirely transparent. Whether or not somebody's using a human click farm or not, entirely transparent to your website. It all appears to be coming from one IP address. So that's kind of a big picture view of how a bad actor might use 2Captcha. So I think hopefully that makes sense to some people in your audience.
Yeah. So there have been several like renditions of Captcha, right? And so and I think Jarrod, you were saying earlier that it doesn't take very much. I think you said they could even do it from their bathroom. To like if the Captcha folks do something to upgrade things, is it that like build a better mousetrap, they build a better mouse kind of situation with Captcha?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna share my screen just a little bit more.
Sure.
To talk more about the fingerprinting side of things, because that's where a lot of defenses have moved to, but it's just as silly as what we were just talking about. Let me get a clean profile over here. All right. So a lot of services are built on this open source library called Fingerprint2.js. Even if they're not, or Fingerprint.js2, even if they're not specifically built around this, a lot of the ideas are the same. Let's see. We can't get easily read data. So let's go to Panopticlick, which is an EFF project to determine how fingerprintable your browser is. Now, they come at it from the perspective of privacy. This is the same sort of concept that ad services use to track you across sites. So they know that, like, if you search for pet kitten on one site and you go somewhere else, they can sell you kitty litter on another site. But the same concept is used from defenses in the same way Captchas are, because if the same browser can be fingerprinted sending thousands or millions of requests, then it becomes easy to block that browser. So this is some of the stuff that is gathered. So you see it's like the user agent, HTTP accept headers, the plugins that my browser has in them, my time zone, which for right now is Eastern, my screen size, the fonts that I have in the system. Fonts is another commonly grabbed fingerprintable data point, because as soon as you add a font, then you have a unique combination of fonts on your system. So if you grab that from every user and you add it with all this other stuff, you can find a pretty reasonably unique fingerprint for that browser. But the gist of all this, though, is that it's just collecting data from a browser that these services don't control, and it becomes easy and straightforward for the adversary side to just change those data points so they get a different fingerprint or a different whatever they need to. So the fingerprint-based defenses are just kind of like the naive snake oily type defenses that'll capture like the 50% of probably attacks you're seeing, just like the naive script kiddie attacks, like the people who are just either too inexperienced or too unmotivated to actually do anything unique for a website. But anything past that point, it's trivial to just make different changes to the stuff that these things are looking for. And you can do it all with basic JavaScript. You don't need any special tools or anything. You can download stuff, Chrome extensions that already exist, run JavaScript in a browser. It's a depressing cat and mouse game, because from the defender side, it gets harder and harder as the months go on. And on the attacker side, it gets easier and easier as these things become more well-known and code becomes more well-shared.
Yeah, it's fascinating and frightening all at the same time, because I feel like so many companies are utilizing something like, something like a Captcha to say, hey, I'm securing my website. So let's talk a few. So in a true CSA way, without answering shape security, because that's too easy. If you are, let's say, again, we've got some folks out there that are using Captcha tech. I keep looking at my sign above my head, that's my green screen that just reads An Old Fisherman, which is thoroughly accurate, but also super distracting. So anyways, so what else? Let's talk a little bit. So tell me about why, maybe a company that's out there that's using this type of technology or has a website that they want to secure in a real way would talk with shape security versus going down the Captcha route.
Look, I could give your audience guidance and not mention shape security once. It's quite easy. The first thing is they have to kind of understand the size and scope of the problem. And what I've seen across virtually every enterprise is that they grossly underestimate the size of the problem. They think maybe we have a 20 or 30% automated attack problem. And then we'll go in line and look and see that they have over 90% of their traffic is automated malicious attack. So I think the first thing is you need to get visibility into the size and scope of the problem. Understanding what motivates attackers is pretty important. For instance, if your forgot password workflow gives somebody feedback as to whether or not the username they entered exists, then your forgot password workflow will be under attack. If it doesn't give feedback, For example, if when I put in my email address, dswood65@gmail.com, and I want to reset my password, and they come back and say, if that account exists in our systems, then we will send an email with instructions on how to reset your password. That gives me no feedback as to whether or not the account exists. If that's your feedback, then your forgot password workflow will not be under attack. So you have to look at all your workflows and try to ask yourself, what would be the incentive for an attacker to launch automation? Now, login, the incentive is obvious. It's credential stuffing. They're trying millions and millions of stolen username password pairs against login. And if your defense against credential stuffing is a Captcha, then you have no defense at all. They just use these human click farms to get around it. Now, once you understand the size and scope of the problem by studying all your workflows and understanding which are vulnerable and which aren't, then you have to deploy some JavaScript. You have to collect these signals. You can't do it all at the network level. You can't just look at user agent string and IP addresses. You have to collect signals from the browser. So once you collect all these signals, then you need to analyze those signals in real time and make a determination whether or not it is good or bad traffic. And then if you decide that it's bad traffic, you need flexibility in the way you mitigate it. For example, you can't just drop the session because that gives the attacker immediate feedback that he or she is being mitigated. What you want to do is have some flexibility in how you mitigate that traffic. You want to redirect it, forward it, respond with a fully formed HTML, inject something into the stream and send it to origin. One of our customers, when we detect that it's an automated attack, tells us just change the password to 5 X's and send it to origin. Because that gives the attacker the same experience that somebody would if they just entered in the incorrect password. Except, I guess, for the poor soul whose password is 5 X's. That account is going to take it over. So the idea is to take a mitigating action that does not give the attacker immediate feedback that he's being mitigated because he will retool. So the next thing that you need to protect yourself is what we call stage 2 analysis or retrospective analysis. Attackers retool, they become more sophisticated, they get better and better and better at imitating humans. They're going to get past your stage 1 countermeasure eventually. When they do, you need the ability to detect it. This is where your AI and ML systems are running over huge amounts of data, maybe over the last hour, the last 3 hours, the last week, the last month, looking for any sign of malicious traffic getting past your real-time stage 1 countermeasure. It isn't enough to find it. You then need the ability to update stage 1. So that's the kind of thing you need to defend yourself against these sorts of attacks. I know that was a lot. I think I talked for 2 or 3 minutes straight there. Jarrod, any color to add, or Matt, any questions?
Yeah, and I think, even if you do go down the shape route, it all comes down to every 3 to 6 months reassessing your defenses for everything that you are using to block the holes that you can't close. So like the login, account creation, forgot password, like you can't get rid of those. You have to keep those open because businesses rely on it. Now you can patch servers, whatever else you need to be aware of new patches, certainly, but those vulnerabilities, hopefully once they're patched, they're closed. But for stuff that you have to keep open, you can't deploy something and ignore it. Even shape, like once you go to past 3 to 6 months, go back to your vendors, go back to your team that you developed this thing on, go back to Google, and if it's shape, ask shape or whatever vendor, how do you know nothing's getting by you? How do you know that you just can't see what you can't see? Because same with like Captcha, like you have Captcha, you see that it works, but how do you know it's working? How do you know it's not just letting a whole bunch of stuff by? And it comes down to like just the cost versus value of these defenses. If the longer they stay the same, the cheaper they are to bypass. So like if you've been using Captcha for years, then it's the cost of bypassing it is virtually nothing, like you've just seen. So there's really no hurdle at all. Go to Google, type in how to bypass shape security or bypass reCAPTCHA and see what pops up. If you're not seeing lots of results, that's probably a pretty good sign that adversarial communities are not at the stage where they are readily distributing information on how to bypass these things. If you go to forums where you see those questions and there's no results or no responses, that's probably a pretty good sign. Now, if you enter something like that and you see page upon page of open source solution or documentation or Medium articles or whatever to bypass those defenses, then they're not defenses anymore. They're just annoying your users. So no matter what you're using, Shape, Captcha, whatever else, you have to reevaluate it. And I'm the first to say that you will always be able to make a better product internally than by going to a vendor. But just you have to be able to reassess the solution 3 to 6 months and properly fund the team for it in order to make something that is going to stand the test of time.
So I hope everyone out there heard the part about annoying your customers, because that's me. If you're
me too.
putting a Captcha in front of me, I'm immediately annoyed. And I have clicked away from several things where I'm like, I cannot figure this out. Forget it. And it's super frustrating. So one other thing that, Dan, that I heard you throw out there was like a percentage of traffic that is malicious. So let's talk about that in a little bit because, hey, this is West Michigan. We're very manufacturing based. This isn't Manhattan or some other, high, high financial district type of area. So for companies that are, let's talk a little bit about do hackers really care if you are a manufacturer of product X or a financial or an insurance institution or things like that? Is everyone's data equally as valuable? And again, go over those numbers of what you guys see as a percentage of traffic that is actually malicious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And no, not everybody is equally targeted. Everybody, I would say most enterprises are targeted just for different reasons. So we see attacks launched against obviously hotels, airlines, financial institutions, retailers, insurance companies, any online collaboration tools. We see a lot of malicious attacks. We see against telcos, internet service providers. So it really spans the gamut. But for some of those organizations, you think, well, look, we don't even allow our customers to create online accounts. We're a oil refinery company or something. We don't have these online accounts. Then what will happen is they often will have some sort of a login for their vendors, for their suppliers, for their employees. Then those are under attack. And other times people will say, well, really there's nothing in there. There's no asset in the account. It's not like there's 1 million frequent flyer miles in there or cash or other sorts of loyalty points. All there is perhaps a little PII. Well, that's quite significant. Again, when I was in law enforcement, I investigated a case where just PII was used to establish credibility in this huge multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. What happened is this fraudster had PII that allowed him to call somebody and purport to be from their lender. To give you an example, Matt, if I called you and said, hi, I'm Dan from your lender. I'd like you to make all future payments to this PO box. You'd probably say, go fly a kite. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But if instead I say,
words, but yeah.
yeah, different words. But if I said, hey, Matt, this is Dan from your lender. I see you applied for a refi about 6 months ago and you were turned down, and your payments are $3,800 a month, and you're paying 7.5% interest. We could do a lot better than that. Current interest rates, we can get you down to 3.5%. So do you want to revisit the refi? Do you want to revisit that application? Now suddenly I've got inside information, and you just give me this misplaced trust. And that's how it worked. So PII is often used by fraudsters just to facilitate some social engineering scheme. So yeah, we're seeing, virtually every vertical, governments, everybody under some sort of an attack. In fact, every now and then I come across a new scheme that just impresses me, for lack of a better word, that these fraudsters can be so creative. They're mailing packages using an international shipper, and they're not even actually mailing the packages. They're just purporting to mail them and filing claims for insurance. We see somebody exploiting loyalty points at an online retailer and using it to buy cheese in the local market and selling it to restaurant. I mean, if there's a way to monetize, these fraudsters will find a way. Now, your question about percentages. There are occasionally times where we'll go in line and we'll see 3% automated attack. And we scratch our head like, why is it only 3%? It doesn't make any sense. And say we're on, web. And then we go in line on mobile and we see 88% automated attack. And it's because, the attacker decided to attack web or mobile, and maybe the attacker had an expertise with the native app and doing mobile attacks. So that's where the attackers were. So if we go in line and only see 1, 2, 3% automated attack, it typically means we just haven't been deployed in the right place at the enterprise. And our record, by the way, is 99.99% of all traffic was automated attack traffic. Think about the implications of that. That is just unbelievably impactful. It isn't just the ATO, the account takeover that is occurring. Think about the taxing that is on the back end systems. Think about how do you measure the efficacy of your marketing and email campaigns when 99% of the traffic is automation. It has much broader implication than just account takeover.
Even if they don't get through, if you're using some sort of infrastructure as a service and you're seeing a spike, in a need for more bandwidth or more processors, memory, all of that stuff has a cost associated with it, right? So you could see a cost just from the infrastructure side. So.
Yeah, some fraud tools, in fact, are based on the cost or based on number of transactions. So we've gone in line in some organizations, and they're worried about latency, as they should be. You don't want to introduce a bunch of latency. But oftentimes what will happen is, while Shape will introduce some latency, you can't do what we do without introducing some latency, maybe, 30 or 40 milliseconds. I don't know what it is. But the net result in performance is an improvement, because once you start mitigating, such large volumes of traffic and preventing that from reaching origin, then all the legitimate customers have a much better user experience. In fact, I got to take that back. Our record is at 99.9. Our record is 100% because there was an endpoint where humans could no longer even navigate to it. It was a deprecated endpoint, no longer could navigate to it, but it had been discovered by fraudsters while it was live, and the fraudsters continued to bang away on it. Every single transaction to that endpoint was a malicious attacker. So that's the record. I don't think we'll ever beat 100% though.
No, hopefully not.
And by the way, that reminds me of some fraudsters we saw spoofing signals, and they spoofed the battery at 110%. So fraudsters aren't always the sharpest tools.
Fantastic. Well, hey, look, guys, I really appreciate you doing this. As always with the good conversations, it goes way past what my original intent is from a time standpoint, but this was absolutely fascinating. I think, anyone that is out there watching this, if you're worried about your applications, your website, if you have any sort of logins, this is definitely some stuff that you should be paying attention to, right? And looking at. You may be costing your company by not doing more. Both from a customer happiness standpoint, like me, I'm super selfish if you can't tell, so this is totally about me. But also just, with the fear of being hacked or attacked or whatever the word is. So, all right, well, Dan, Jarrod, again, I really appreciate you guys doing this. Everyone else that's out here watching this, all the contact information will be in the description. Please like, subscribe, share, all that fun YouTube stuff that I keep talking about. And thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jarrod. Be safe.